Hello BookTube, I'm Jonathan and welcome to Words in Time. Now in today's video I'm going to be revealing a bit of a book haul which includes 12 sci-fi books I'm going to be reading in 2022. Now the order in which I share them is going to be the rough order in which I read them. If I pick up a new series and I really want to read the sequels, then that might shuffle a few things down a bit. But rest assured, I will be getting through most or all of these probably within the first half of 2022. So they're pretty heavy, so let's get right into it. So I'm going to be kicking off 2022 with Shards of Earth by Adrian Tchaikovsky. Now, Children of Time is one of my favorite books that I've ever read. Check out my review on the channel if you haven't seen it yet. And I am really excited to get into the final Architecture trilogy. This is the first book in the series and I want to read it before the second one comes out, I believe April 28 of next year. I'm really excited to get into a space opera written by Tchaikovsky when I know he can write scale, write emotion, and I'm expecting big things from this one, especially because this has a 4.30 rating on Goodreads. So just for a little bit of fun, I'm going to be sharing those ratings, and then once I've finished them all, I'm going to come back and see whether there was any correlation between those ratings and how much I enjoyed them. High expectations, high excitement, Shards of Earth, Adrian Tchaikovsky. Next up, we have The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin, the first book in the Broken Earth trilogy. So, what intrigues me about this one is the scale of the ideas. Apparently it has a pretty unique writing style, and the reaction I've seen online has been rather interesting. It seems around 80% of people really click with it, and about 20% of people, this just did not work for them at all. So, I'm interested to see what is so unique about it, what is polarizing, and whether it works for me. I know this is a little bit more fantasy than sci-fi, but I believe it does have sci-fi elements, and I'm not going to be too strict when it comes to what's sci-fi or what's not, as long as people consider it, one of the top 2 or 3 genre tags on Goodreads, for example, then I'd say that counts as sci-fi. But I won't be going full fantasy anytime soon, not because I have anything against fantasy. I do actually want to read more fantasy. It's just that reason number 1, sci-fi is my favorite genre, so that's what I want to focus on. And reason number 2 is I think fantasy is pretty well covered on BookTube. If you wanted to find a review for something new that looks interesting, say like Rage of Dragons, you could probably find 50 great reviews for it on YouTube. But if you wanted to check out something like Shards of Earth that I just mentioned, there's probably only going to be around 5, maybe 10 of them. So hopefully I'm providing content that you guys are looking for in terms of sci-fi, and yeah, let's help sci-fi catch up to fantasy a little bit on BookTube. But anyway, this has a 4.27 rating on Goodreads, so another one that comes highly rated, highly recommended. We'll see what my thoughts are in January, the 5th season. Next up, I have a bit of a 2-for-1 for you guys because one of the books on the list is actually a pre-order, so thought I'd throw in an extra one to make sure we got 12 physical books in the video, and these are Cibola Burn and Nemesis Games, books 4 and 5 in the Expanse series by James S.A. Corey. So I've read the first 3 books in this series. Check out the reviews for those if you're interested on the channel. And a reason why I wanted to go ahead and get both of these is that while it seems like everybody has a different rating, different ranking for each of the books, this one generally seems to be one of the less popular ones, but this one seems to be one of the most popular ones. So I thought, perhaps if I didn't love this one, I would just kick on straight onto this one to get back on the Expanse grind. Although, yeah, hopefully I enjoy them both. If I don't like either of them, we might have to reevaluate. But I don't think that's going to happen because I'm enjoying the series so far, and this one has a 4.21 on Goodreads, and this has a 4.41. So what I'm seeing online is kind of reflected in that score. That's super, super high, so I'm excited to read this one. Let me know in the comments what you thought of these two. What are your favorite books in the Expanse? Next up on the schedule is Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. Now, The Martian I absolutely loved, and I included in my top 10 sci-fi books for beginners video. Check that out if you're looking for some books to get into sci-fi. Definitely recommend it. We'll see if I like this one as much. The rating for this on Goodreads is 4.53, which is absolutely bonkers. That's the highest of any of the books in today's video. And something that I just wanted to share about this copy, it's a large print by Random House, which I did not know when I bought it. I'm just going to show you page 1, so no spoilers or anything, but yeah, the text on that is pretty massive. I do feel like I'm looking at a grandparent's phone, but hey, if that's easier on your eyes and you appreciate it, that works for you, that's cool. I'm glad they came out with an edition like that. That'll be interesting to read. It makes, obviously the amount of words is the same, so it doesn't really make the book longer, but this makes a 400-500 page book about 600-700 pages. So maybe it'll feel like I'm reading faster, and the mastering was pretty fast paced, so we'll see if I fly through this one too. Project Hail Mary. So the next book on the list is The Three-Body Problem by Cixin Liu. Now, this is supposed to be some pretty big idea sci-fi. You guys know that I like some of the harder sci-fi, House of Suns, Spin, those big concepts. I'm all about it, and this won the Hugo Award, and I'm pretty excited to get into it. I really like the premise of it, and I've heard the second and third books in the Remembrance of Earth's Past trilogy get even crazier. Now, Baron from Your Brain on Books and I have kind of loosely scheduled a bit of a buddy read for the start of March. So we'll give you more details on that closer to the time, but if you're interested in this and you want to pick it up and you've got some room in your schedule next year, join us early March. We're going to be reading this. This has a 4.06 on Goodreads, so not quite as high as some of the others on the list, but anything over 4 is still pretty good, pretty highly rated. So we'll see how much I like it and whether I want to continue the series after reading The Three-Body Problem. Now, the next book on the list I don't have on hand because it is a pre-order, and that is Kingdoms of Death by Christopher Rocchio, the 4th book in the Sun Eater series, which comes out March 8th of next year. So I've made a few book videos on the Sun Eater series already. I absolutely loved Empire of Silence, Howling Dark, The Lesser Devil and Other Stories, the novella and short story collection, and I'm currently reading Demon in White, and it is absolutely fantastic as well. So I've got to be honest, guys, this is my #1 most anticipated release of the year. I don't know what else to tell you about it, but here's the quick pitch. If you haven't picked it up already, it has fantastic prose, layered characters, expansive world building, great action, and some really deep themes. If I don't answer your call come March 8th, it's probably because I'm reading Kingdoms of Death. Moving on, we have The Shadow of the Torturer by Gene Wolfe. Now, this is arguably the first classic on the list. After picking these books up, I noticed it was skewed a little bit more towards modern sci-fi, but if you like classic sci-fi, don't worry, I will be evening that out throughout the year. There are some books by authors like Philip K. Dick and Arthur C. Clarke that I will definitely be getting to as well. So, The Shadow of the Torturer is book 1, or arguably part 1, of the Book of the New Sun. And this particular edition that I got, I'm not sure how much I like it, but I respect it, and I'll explain what I mean by that. This is actually the first half, or the first 2 books, 2 parts of the Book of the New Sun, Shadow of the Torturer and The Claw of the Conciliator. Now, I think I would probably have preferred just to get The Shadow of the Torturer by itself, have a smaller book, or all 4 combined as the Book of the New Sun. Giving you just 2 of these, as it says here, the first half, is a little bit sneaky, because if you read the first one, you're only planning on reading on the first one, you'll probably read the second one, because it's going to be right there. And then if you like that one, you're forced to buy the second book as well. So, clever marketing. Don't know how good it looks on the shelf. But yes, if I enjoy The Shadow of the Torturer, I'll be reading The Claw of the Conciliator as well, I guess. And this only has a 3.80 on Goodreads, which is the lowest on today's video. It seems like people have a little bit of a tough time getting into this one, but if they like it, they really, really like it. There's a lot of passionate fans out there for Shadow of the Torturer. Very influential on a lot of other writers. Gene Wolfe, a writer's writer, it would seem. So we'll see if he's a writer for me with The Shadow of the Torturer. Next up, we have Iron Gold by Pierce Brown, the first book in the second Red Rising trilogy. Now, I did include Red Rising in my top 10 sci-fi books for beginners list, and I really enjoyed the original trilogy. I haven't talked all that much about it on the channel yet, but I will be making some videos on those. I'm interested to see what Pierce Brown does with the second trilogy, because the story felt somewhat complete, so I want to know where it goes, what direction this is headed, and the timing of this I might move around based on the release date when it's announced for the third and final book in the second trilogy, because I do want to read this and Dark Age just in time for that. Now, this has a 4.19 rating on Goodreads, which is pretty strong, although a little lower than some of the others in the Red Rising series, but I've heard Dark Age is very good, and also long. Every book that Pierce Brown writes is longer than the last, so the final book could be a bit of a monster, but we'll see how much I want to get there after I've read Iron Gold. After that, on the schedule, we have Ancillary Justice by Anne Leckie. Now, this is a space opera which has AI spaceships, and I love AI. If you saw my 25 science fiction tropes tier list, that was pretty high up, so I'm intrigued by this one, especially because it won both the Hugo and the Nebula Awards. Now, this has a 3.97 rating on Goodreads, which is not bad. I'd say around 3.8 to 4 is about average, so it's on the higher end of average, but it's perhaps a little bit low for a Hugo and Nebula Award-winning book. So I'm interested in the premise, and I'm also intrigued to see why some people love it, but it didn't work for everyone. And if I like it, I'll be continuing with the Imperial Reg trilogy. So let me know your thoughts. If you've read it, get down in the comments, and let me know whether you think I'm going to enjoy Ancillary Justice. And with our third last book on the list, we have A Canticle for Leibowitz by Walter M. Miller Jr. Now, this is another classic and another Hugo Award winner. Now, this is a post-apocalyptic story, which isn't necessarily my favorite genre, but this is one of my favorite covers. This made my top 10 sci-fi book covers list video. Check that out if you haven't seen it and you like looking at pretty sci-fi book covers like this. This looks pretty epic. This conveys a pretty strong tone and feel, something I'm looking forward to getting into. This has a 3.97 as well, like Ancillary Justice, so it comes pretty highly recommended, but it doesn't necessarily work for everyone. Let me know your thoughts if you've read it, and I'll be sharing sometime next year my thoughts on A Canticle for Leibowitz. And with our penultimate book on the list, we have Pushing Ice by Alistair Reynolds. Now, I've read Chasm City and House of Suns, and I really enjoyed Chasm City, and I absolutely loved House of Suns. So, before getting into the Revelation Space series, I wanted to try one more standalone from Reynolds, which Pushing Ice is. And something that I think will be interesting is the time period that it's set in, the year 2057. Because Chasm City was set about 500 years in the future, and House of Suns takes place over millions of years. So, perhaps without some of the advanced technology that Reynolds can write about so well, I want to see what he does in a near future setting. So, this has a 4.06 on Goodreads, which is pretty strong. I feel like Reynolds is a little underrated on Goodreads, so we'll see if I think that that applies to this book. Let me know your thoughts on Pushing Ice or any Reynolds books if you've read them. Can't wait to get into Pushing Ice. And the 12th and final book, already on the schedule for 2022, is Consider Phlebas by Ian M. Banks. Now, this is the first book in the Culture series, although they can all be read as standalones, and a lot of people recommend starting with The Player of Games or another book in the series, which is what I did. So, I read The Player of Games and really enjoyed it and picked up Use of Weapons, and I actually bought this before I read Use of Weapons, with my plan being, I'm going to like this one, and at that point, I'll know I'm committed to the series, so I'll just go back to book number 1 and make my way through the series. But a little wrench in the works. I didn't love Use of Weapons. I'll be doing a full review for it soon. There were definitely moments of brilliance. I see why people like it, but there were times where I was a little bit confused and it didn't always hold my interest. So now I'm not so sure what to do with the Culture series. I need your advice. If you're a Culture reader, let me know whether I should just go back to the beginning, start with this one and make my way through, whether that's the best way to read it, or whether I should just pick one that sounds the most interesting to me. Because based on premise alone, I would probably go with Accession. So let me know if that's a good idea, horrible idea. I very much welcome your input. This has a 3.86 rating on Goodreads, which is not terrible, but is definitely lower than most of the books in the Culture series. So I'll definitely get to it eventually. We'll see what order I read them in, and we'll see what I think, how it compares to the player of games and use of weapons. Final book on the list. Consider Fleabus. So there you go, guys. Here are 12 books that I already have on the schedule for 2022. It'll be interesting to come back to this a few months from now and see which ones I enjoyed and which of these series I decided to continue with. So I want to hear from you guys. What are your thoughts on the books on this list that you've read? Or if you haven't read them, which are the books that sound the most interesting to you? And lastly, what other books are not on this list that are on your schedule for 2022? If you've gone ahead and made a spreadsheet or penciled something out, let me know what your plans are. I'm excited for another great year of sci-fi in 2022. I hope you are too, and hope you enjoyed the video. I'm carrying a lot of books that are quite heavy for a large amount of time, so I'd really appreciate it if you liked and subscribed if you do enjoy the content, and we'll be back with more sci-fi content very soon.